You're listening to the Low Pressure Podcast, the podcast for skiers.
Presented by CMH Heli-Skiing and Peak Performance.
Cheers.
Cheers, buddy. Nice to see you. Oh, that's what I was going to do. I got up just a second ago. I wanted to figure out exactly what episode you were on. I think it might have been like number 20.
It's been a while. Yeah. It's been a while since we've had a chat like this.
Right? It was the first season.
Was it?
2014.
No way. That long ago.
Yeah, I'm going on 10th anniversary next year. Season 10 next year.
Wow, congrats.
Planning a party.
And we might even be able to party by then.
Yeah, right? Well, we were able to do IF3 kind of nicely this year. So I think we might combine it with IF3, and I've got some funky ideas for like a big fun event where people can participate, and I'll keep you informed.
Thank you.
You will be informed.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I mean, I think I speak for all of us when I say that getting together, having some fun, having some real conversations with loud music background is something that we're all kind of craving.
Yeah, I agree. Except I just stopped looking at the news.
Yeah, me too. I've backed right off. Yeah, because it's just a constant stream of depressing stuff. And you know what? I'd rather go skiing.
Yeah, right? It's like, oh, we got a new record COVID. Oh, what's this? Russia's going to invade Ukraine now? Oh, click.
Yeah, back to skiing.
Yeah. There's nothing I can do about that one, so I'm just going to not think about it. I'm just going to hide. Have you been going through a little, you've been going stir crazy?
You know, I go through waves.
Yeah.
I go through waves. I mean, work has been tough through the pandemic.
Yeah.
I spend a lot of time doing production stuff, and a lot of my work has travel involved. I haven't been further than Calgary, Alberta in 2 years now. So,
and from a guy that's traveled 50, 60 days a year or more
more, yeah.
20 years.
I've built a professional career that involves travel. Like, it's just built into what we do, whether it's my professional skiing or production work with Switchback Entertainment. We're moving around, and that's something that we always do until the last 2 years. And so being home has been weird, and we're hopeful that we can get back on the road at least a little bit. I don't think I'm ever going to travel quite at the level I used to, but either for the fact that I don't need to, or
your carbon calculator probably looks pretty good right now.
and for environmental reasons. I mean, I'm looking at where I'm going and what I'm doing, and I'm like, okay, do I really need to do that? And sometimes the answer is no. Yeah. So,
well, then it's good because it forces you to adapt, right? You should probably learned a lot in the last couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, the upside of it has been family time. Mm-hmm. Spending a lot more time with my family, my wife. And that's been nice, actually. I know for some people, it can go either way. You don't know, how.
Do you know how many COVID babies I of my personal friends I've met that have been produced in the last 6 months?
Yeah, there's a lot of
COVID babies,
and people having. Mason Michon just announced that he had a baby 2 days. Two days ago or something.
He's the current episode on the LPP.
Oh, nice.
And he was sitting there and he's like, could happen right now. Happened 2 days after. Yeah. So congrats, Mason.
Congrats to Mason and Diane.
I was talking to Stan a couple days ago, and between the two of us, I think there were 20 people we know that have kids that are under 6 months.
Yeah, 7 months. See, I'm a little older than you guys, so I'm at that age where we're starting to kick them out of the house. Yeah. My wife and I are looking forward to the time when it's just us again. We our son just went off to UVic, so he's in university now. So we've got a little bit quieter house and a few more years before our daughter heads the same way.
Is it weird?
It's a little bit weird, but it's interesting because I have I think my relationship with our son is the best it's been in many years. He's got through his teenage angst a little bit, and he's finding himself, and he's at school, and he's got a new group of friends, and he's thriving. And we have great conversations on the phone, and he's starting to say things like, hey, Dad, remember when you told me that thing there a couple of years ago? He goes, yeah, you're right. Stuff like that. So, that's nice to hear.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was talking to Tippy the other day, who I do the other podcast with, and his daughter Jessamy's 13, and they were up riding the other day, and she was doing some racing. He was kind of coaching, and then they were on their own program, and they ended up running into each other. And Tippy was like, "Hey, do you want to just ride with your friends, or do you want to come riding with me?" She's like, "No, I want to go ride with my friends." He's like, "Okay." And then he looked at me. He's like, "That's the first time she ever said that." I'm like, "How'd that feel?" I was like, "I don't know."
Yeah, my daughter's 14, and she's at that point where, you know, we had a couple days earlier in the season where she was like, "That was awesome, Dad. You know, you're my best ski buddy." And then lately she's like, "No, I just want to go with my friends." So
That's fair.
it's kind of like, you know, that 14, 15-year-old time is when they're trying to figure out who they are and what they're all about. So it's all good.
Who's been harder for you as a father, having a boy or having a girl going through that stage?
I would say probably the boy so far.
Yeah.
I mean, he's through and out the other side of it, but, you know, there were some times, and it wasn't so much that he was getting into trouble or anything, but like getting sucked in by video games, or, you know, you wonder, like, is this kid ever going to leave the house? That sort of stuff. But he's come out the other side, you know, and it's, you know, if there's any parents listening, you know, I remember being really worried when my son was like 14, 15 years old. I was like, all he wants to do is stay home and game. And, you know, he was playing hockey at that point, so he was getting out a little bit, but he's gotten through it. And he barely plays video games anymore.
I remember when I was that age, it was really before video games were good enough to spend the whole day on video games, but I watched a lot of TV, a lot of naps, and a lot of TV. Like, I think back on it now, and I think I was kind of addicted to it. I don't even have a TV now. I haven't watched. People are like, "Have you seen this show or have you seen that show?" I'm like, no, but yeah, I guess you grew out of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel for the kids today because phones, you know, this social media, this connectivity has added a whole layer that we didn't have when we were that age. And I'm watching what my kids are going through. You know, my son just broke up with his girlfriend, and it's hard. It's hard when you can see what these people are doing at any given time. You know, it's hard to, like, cut those ties, right?
Right? Like, how many times have you, like, thought of something? Like, as a ski pro, 100% you know this. How many times have you been at a party? Let's just say, let's make a specific point. Let's say you've been at pick any party at Sushi Village back in the early 2000s. And when you think back on those days, pick any single one and think, thank God no one had a phone.
Yeah. I know. You have to be so careful now.
Right.
And I look at these kids, and I think things are a lot tamer than they used to be for that reason. Like, you just can't do that stuff. It never goes away.
But for real though, like, pick one of those.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of nudity in those early days at Sushi Village.
The no pants parties. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, and we're talking about a restaurant. We're not even talking about a bar right now.
No, exactly. Like, it's still, you can still every once in a while we'll be sitting in there, someone will walk by and try to sell you somebody's pants, but it was loose. Right, and now I guess it's not really the same. Do you see, thinking back on those days, right? And you're still around the ski industry, and now you kind of have the same. Imagine the same situation these days. Do you notice a significant difference in how people act and party now than they did versus then?
Well, I mean, I guess I have to go back a couple years to think of that, because no one's done any partying really for the last 2 years. Fair. But no, for sure. I mean, there is. You know, everything's recorded. You will be videotaped doing anything outrageous these days, and that stuff stays with you. And back in the day, I mean, I think there was a little bit, Freeskiing was a little looser. It was a little more of a rowdy crowd back, especially in the late 90s. Guys like, you know, Brad Holmes and Kent Kreitler and Seth Morrison. And I mean, I could go on and tell stories all day.
Yeah, I got all day.
But yeah, but that stuff, you don't see that level of debauchery anymore. Like, or I don't, at least, you know, the Motley Crue style party, you know, that was like the standard, like the hair metal bands, like, we want to party like those guys. Yeah,
true. I was at a party not long ago, and some people were doing something that was not the smartest thing, but it was fun, but not the smartest thing in front of phones. And people had their phones out, and I jumped in front of them like, put your fucking phone away, don't film this. And like, just randoms, they're like, oh, they put their phone in their pocket, and they're like, whoa, what got into you? I'm like, you don't want that on anybody's phone. Like, don't give anybody a reason to have anything over you or do anything for you. So I don't know. I'm super paranoid with that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Just be careful.
Yeah, you have to be careful. And I mean, at the same time, there's so much progress, when you look at equality and just the way that you treat people. And I think, things were always done a certain way because they were always done a certain way.
And you could get away with them.
Yeah, but the LGBTQ 2+ community, they took a lot of abuse unfairly through those years. The First Nations communities, the people of color. I mean, I think that there's a lot of good that's happened in the world, but at the same time, yeah, it's this constant surveillance. I think
weird. I think they got that such a bad rap back then because it was different times. Now we're a little more sensitive, but also there was no checks and balances, right? You could get away with that stuff anonymously, right? And on the flip side of what you're saying with all the surveillance, a lot of that surveillance is like you're making sure that you're not someone's being a jackass. You know what I mean? Don't be an asshole. Don't be that person, because if you are, you're going to get checked.
Yeah. So it's not all bad, but it is. I do feel, especially for the kids, that connectivity is unhealthy, and there's lots of studies that have come out now that say that these social media apps are addictive, and they're designed to draw you in and keep you hooked and keep you
100%.
clicking and scrolling and all these things. And man, I'm guilty of it myself. I've been sucked in, and I kind of go in waves. I get pulled down the rabbit hole, and then I'll pull myself back out.
I just waste so much time. Like I took Facebook off my phone like a year and a half ago, which is the best thing I think I ever did.
Yeah, I did that too.
And the only thing I use it now for is just posting. Like I still have to have I'd love to just get rid of all the apps, honestly. But I, obviously have a business. I want to post for the podcast, do all that sort of thing. But I find when I do that, I get stuck. And I go through these I'll find myself wasting 45 minutes to an hour, and I'll be like, damn it. Or I'll look at the clock, it's like 10 to 10. All right, how cool. 10 o'clock, I'll stop looking at this, and it's like 10:45. And all right, fine, I'll finally put it on, or I'll scroll past something that I've already seen, and then it's like, oh, wait, stop looking,
Yep.
So I don't know. Maybe I'll sell a few more ads, and I can hire some kid from the adventure school to go do this for me, and I can take it all off completely. Just reinstall it once a week and see how he's doing or see how she's doing, and then
it'd be nice.
Shut it down a little bit again.
Such a weird world.
Do you find that that's in the time that we've had in the last two years? You said like the business, like the switchback. Have you found that you've needed to rely on that a little bit more because it is that connectivity in order to get out, to stay relevant, get information, show clips, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, the goalposts are constantly shifting, right? I mean, when you go on to these social media apps, there was a time when, a well-produced 30-second trailer style thing that was shot with red cameras and a drone and all this stuff would do really well. And now it's, you use a GoPro or you use your phone and you make a reel and you put some music to it, and it just needs to be raw, and that's what gets all the engagement. I mean, I've spent months working on a film that gets the same engagement as one of my little POV cams that took me 30 seconds to make.
Yeah.
And it's
is that demoralizing?
To a certain degree, for sure. I mean, you think about the investment just in gear alone, and not only the expense of the gear, but then packing a red camera and a Movi Pro gimbal stabilizer and all these things way out to the backcountry, and you think of the day that it took to get that one really cool shot, and then by comparison what it took to take out your phone and do a video of your friend wiping out, or you throw your GoPro on and you ski down for 30 seconds. It's but I don't make the rules, man. I don't know. I'm just trying to keep up and
trying to figure out. I wonder if it if all of these little clips. So, for instance, at IF3 this past year, we had the most video submissions ever, right? So, are all of these little clips and all of these things that people are doing, is it raising the bar or is it lowering? So, what I'm trying to get is are all these people becoming interested in what they're able to do with their phones and they get a little taste of that creative process in creating maybe moving forward to creating something bigger and better. And on the flip side, are those bigger, high energy and energy intensive and time intensive projects, cost intensive projects, are they being devalued, or are they becoming better because people are now having a better entrance into being able to create stuff like that through these little clips?
Overall, I would say it's positive, because I love the idea of a kid with a creative vision who loves skiing, for example, that gets out there with an iPhone and a GoPro and makes something that fires his friends up and gets people stoked on skiing. Like, that is so cool to me, and I get jazzed. You know, occasionally I'll I do something at the high school, or I'll go work with momentum camps on their exposure series or whatever, and see these kids with all these ideas, and the barriers to entry have never been lower. I mean, you can literally make something that's worth watching on your phone, and that's so cool.
Check out the Low Pressure Podcast on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. There's an iPhone shooting us right now. So overall, I think it's great, and the fact that there was the most submissions ever this year is really cool, because it means that kids are seeing paths in those directions. Because when I got started, there was like these, there was TGR and MSP and Poor Boys and Level 1, and that was it.
Yeah.
Those were Warren Miller. Those were your paths to become a skier and get filmed and try to make a pro career. Well, now with social media and everyone sort of having affordable access to this stuff, the options are huge. Now, when I think there still is a space for guys like us at Switchback and what we do, because we're starting to do a little bit more, I'd say, high-end commercial work than we used to, and that still requires the fancy lenses and stabilizers and all the big gear and all that kind of stuff. There is a separation there, but I think for a lot of people, especially ski fans, for example, they don't care. They just want to see cool action, stoke me out. Does it put a smile on my face? Does it make me want to get out there and make some turns? Then let's make it happen.
Right, that's a good point. You mentioned high schools. You did a really cool movie recently. So everybody knows that you are a climate champion. You're one of the board members of Protect Our Winters Canada, and you recently did a film with a young gentleman named Sam, if I'm not mistaken. Sam,
Yep,
right? Yeah,
that's right.
Explain that. Explain the project and then how that came about, because I thought it was really fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, we're always looking for film ideas. My longtime sponsor, Solomon, I've been with them for, I think I'm heading into my 25th year on Solomon.
Are they going to give you like a gold watch?
I don't know. We'll see.
25th year.
But it's been a good run. And 15 years ago, we started Solomon Freeski TV, which was an online ski series, kind of the first one.
It was the ski series for for a long time. It was what people watched. It was kind of what kicked off what's happening now, right? You were one of the first to do it, really.
Yeah, we were early into that sort of YouTube and online streaming stuff, and we built a good audience, and we were able to do a lot of cool stuff. So now that shifted, that whole part of the internet is a little bit different than it used to be. So we're shifting a little bit more toward longer films, and so I'm always looking for films that align with what the brand is into at any given time, and also things that stoke me up. And so last year we were looking at doing something on the sort of the social responsibility spectrum, be it from environment to education, avalanche awareness, all that, in that kind of area. And we were just starting to develop ideas in the summer, and I got this random letter from he was 12 at the time, 12-year-old kid named Sam Tierney, and he sent me a letter saying that he was really worried about climate change, and it had him stressed out, and he was having trouble sleeping at night, and he didn't know what to do, and talked to his mom, and she said, well, maybe you can reach out to this guy Mike, who is on the board with Protect Our Winters Canada, and maybe he has some ideas for you. So he sent me a letter, and I get those kind of things once in a while, but never from like a 12-year-old. That was something totally new. And so of course you want to help a kid like that. Like that's the worst thing I can think of is a 12-year-old that can't sleep properly at night because he's so worried. So I sent him back a reply and gave him a few tips, and then we kind of kept in touch. And
Was this like you're thinking back on the timeline of how long the movie would have taken and when it came out? I bet your daughter was about the same age at this point, correct?
Yeah, my daughter, they were the same age actually. Turns out Sam lives in Pemberton. We live in Whistler. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know him until we met actually at a climate march later that fall.
Is it the one at Lost Lake?
Yeah, I think you were there that day.
The one that I was calling the mayor out.
Yes.
I told you this issue that I had of them using climate change as an excuse to not allow an event, and then they allowed someone else to do the exact same event. So I was like, I was choked, and I told you about it, and then I remember the mayor was standing in the middle of the courtyard, and everybody's around it. And I put my hand up and I looked directly at you, and you almost looked like you're like, don't do it. I could see the look in your face, shaking your head. I was like, whatever, I'm asking him. Anyways, you met him at that march.
Yeah, I actually met him for the first time there, and that's when the idea started first going through my mind. Is that I wanted to help him. I just, it's so sad to think that there's kids that are feeling this way. And I knew he wasn't alone because I've heard this from other people.
So much anxiety.
Yeah.
Because it's just doom and gloom. That's all we ever hear about, right? Like
For sure. And then you look at, what's being done, and you realize that very little is being done. So what are you going to do? So anyway, I got Sam sort of activated with the POW, what we're doing at POW. Because by activating, you give yourself some hope, it's like by doing something about it, at least you're moving in the right direction.
Get a little sense of purpose, and it feels like you're actually contributing to something, however big or small it may be. It's like, I'm actually doing something.
Yeah, because the worst thing is just to sit at home and feel hopeless. No one wants to feel like that.
Right.
So, and then at that time, the idea for that maybe there was a film here. Maybe I could spend the winter and take Sam up on the mountain here and show him, give him some ski tips and give him some tips on how to be a better environmentalist and how to be a good steward of the earth. And I ended up talking to his parents about a month later and said, hey, what do you think about, us making a film? And they were like, you know what, that sounds really cool. I think Sam would really like that. So after we got their approval, we approached Sam and said, hey, what do you think of this? He's like, awesome, I want to be in a ski movie. This is so cool. And we started, just after the Christmas break, we started skiing together once a week. And we did that for the whole season until things shut down in the end of March.
Wow.
Yeah. And actually we skied together even after the mountain shut down. We ended up going ski touring up in the Duffy. Mm-hmm. So, and then we just documented that and through that process. And I got Sam to set some goals about what he wanted to do on skis, also what he wanted to do on the climate front for the environment, and then we just went out and worked toward them, and that's the film, Sam and Me. Yeah.
This is just you talking about his issues and figuring it out together.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, in the film, I carry the film a little bit in the way that I'm telling stories from the things that sort of shaped me through my life. And made me aware of what was going on around us from an environmental perspective. Because I'm not an environment. I would never consider myself an environmentalist or an activist. Like, I didn't grow up that way. I grew up in Campbell River, man. It's like Campbell River is a resource town, logging, fishing, mining, and that's what surrounded me. So I didn't really have that sort of hippie tree hugger thing going on inside me. But once I started skiing and traveling around a little bit and started to see what was actually going on in the mountains around me, I was like, whoa, there's some big changes going on here. We got to do something.
Right. Well, I like I said to this before, I disagree that you're an activist. You are, and only you may not feel it in your soul as in how you perceive activists, but you've done more for this movement in our industry than almost anybody. So this is a good time to kind of transition. So Protect Our Winters is 4 years old now. Protect Our Winters.
4 years old, yeah.
So you were working with Protect Our Winters in the United States,
yeah,
with Jeremy Jones, and when it first got started there, and then there was an opportunity to start a Canadian chapter with a gentleman named Dave Erb, who is just let's not even say just, like he's basically built this thing from nothing to this powerhouse within Canada. I'm going to call it powerhouse, right?
It's been, I mean, it's pretty impressive what him and the POW team have been able to accomplish in the last 4 years, for sure.
And the reason I said just was because he has just announced that he's stepping aside. So I wanted, and I've been involved, in a small way with Protect Our Winters as an ambassador, doing what I can to connect people and put a little bit of a message out. But the work that he's done, and realizing that we tried to do one of these before, actually at a POW summit, the audio was pretty terrible in the little rainy building, and I felt terrible. I was really sick that day too, I think. So we weren't able to use it, but I'm like thinking we haven't given the Protect Our Winters a proper episode, kind of the proper attention it needs. And having Dave step aside, I thought it was a perfect time to kind of honor what he has done and what he's accomplished for this organization within Canada specifically. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, Dave, there was a group of us athletes here, mostly Whistler based, some guys in Revelstoke as well, that were trying to get Protect Our Winters Canada off the ground.
With Tobin and McIntosh and yourself.
Greg Hill,
Marie.
Chris Rubens, Marie Francois. And we were all POW athletes in the U.S. But we were like, Canada needs this too. The world needs this, really. And so we were having some meetings and trying to figure out how to get everything off the ground. And I mean, a bunch of pro skiers and snowboarders, we were not the most savvy at trying to get a not-for-profit, registered and all the legalities taken care of and all these sorts of things. Not to mention we were trying to do it in the winter when everyone's busy. I was going to say,
I'd be surprised if you're all able to get into the same room or at least on the same phone call at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, literally, that's the level we were at.
I have tried to get skiers on this podcast to come at a specific day or time for 9 years, and it's probably the hardest thing in the entire world is to nail somebody down. I had a couple of people lined up last week. They're like, oh, no, I'm not coming to town. I'm leaving. Oh, whatever. I had to do something else. I'm like, all right, no big deal.
Yeah. So the beautiful thing is that Dave Erb popped out of nowhere with a phone call to me and said, hey, I was just talking to the people down at Protect Our Winters in the U.S., and they said that you were trying to get this going in Canada. And I was thinking the exact same thing, and it would be great if we had a conversation. And we did. I think Dave and I spent 2 hours on the phone and hit it off, and our visions were more or less aligned, and he had all this positive energy, and he also had the know-how, how to register a nonprofit, how to do all the legalities, how to get us set up in a way that we could thrive in the future. Because if you don't do all these things right and in the right order and take your time at the beginning, you can have problems down the way. Mm-hmm. So Dave came in, and he was like sent from the heavens, man. I was so happy because all of a sudden it took that pressure off our athlete group, and we were able to just advise Dave. He would call myself, he'd call Greg Hill, he'd call Ian McIntosh, and he would sort of pick our brains from sort of the ski snowboard marketing side, and then figure out how to integrate that into a not-for-profit environmental group. And also, I mean, we were lucky too, because Protect Our Winters have been going for about a decade down in the U.S. at this point, and they had a lot of know-how and a lot of programs up and running, and we were able to sort of piggyback on their coattails and then sort of
use Dave as a way to assimilate it through Canadian policy and Canadian rules.
Exactly,
and
guidelines.
Because
because you can't do everything exactly the same, but we were able to borrow a lot of what POW had done in the U.S. and then adapt it for Canada. And then Dave, in the years since then, has taken it and run with it in directions that they haven't done in the U.S. So I mean, I can't say enough about Dave. He is one of those just absolutely incredible individuals.
Yeah, and the growth has been extremely fast in Canada, and a lot of it has to do with the creativity that Dave and the team and you guys have come up with as well. Everything from like the Fact Back campaign, which is one of the first real big, cool kind of Twitter social media campaigns where you can really drive engagement. What's the one, oh shoot, I should have written these down, because there's just been so many, like, and they've all been pretty impressive. Who comes up with all these ideas for these individual campaigns? Because they're so creative, and I know that people down in the States have been paying attention, being like, whoa, that's awesome, like, we're going to adopt this as well.
Well, I would say that Dave is the front man, and I think that Dave comes with the most ideas, but we have a pretty big staff now. I think we're already up to 7 or 8 people that work for POW Canada.
Wow.
I mean, it's so there's a lot of credit to be shared around for sure. And then we have a board. I think our board is might be up to 9 now on the POW board, and we've got some really smart people on the board. And between staff and the board and just, and just passionate people that care, that are sending us ideas, I think part of the problem is just trying to keep up, honestly, and figure out and filter and what are we going to do. If I had to go back and look at what Dave's done, I think the most impressive thing to me is that he organized community chapters of POW. And he sort of, and it was, they haven't done that in the U.S. It's very centralized in the U.S. And it was risky. I remember when he first pitched the idea to me, and I was like, ooh, I don't know. We're kind of like giving up some control of the organization. What if things go sideways? But man, it has been absolutely huge, because it's one thing to focus on climate and focus at a national level, but people really, when you think about it, they're concerned about what's going on in their backyards. It's like that old growth forest up behind my house, or that mine that is spilling over into the edge of our town, or the air quality, or you name it. And so people want to get involved with things that they can see, they can feel, they can touch, and that affect their lives directly. And so we now have, I think we're up to, might be 11 community chapters now across Canada.
Wow.
So, and that's been huge, because we have a leader in each of those communities who then rallies the membership there. And they get involved with things that I don't even know about. It's great. They're kind of going through what are the issues in our area, and
with events
action.
And things too. Like every once in a while, I'll see on Facebook the once a week that I sign in, like log into Facebook. I'd be like, oh, there was a POW event.
Yeah.
In a Whistler chapter event.
Yeah, and a lot of times I don't even know what's
right?
going on in this town. If I'm tuned out like you are, and I haven't been on Facebook for a week, I may have missed a POW event, but there could have been 50 people there that were passionate about what was going on.
Well, that just speaks to the strength of the organization that they've built, is that as the board, who's more or less been the face of POW Canada for the last 4 years, if you don't necessarily know what's going on or need to know what's going on, do you know what I mean? You can just let it run.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, and we've got such a passionate crew, and they're running with it, and it's great. I shouldn't need to know what's going on all the time. You know what I mean? Like, right. If for an organization to run right, it's good for me to have an idea of what the trends are, where we're heading, what our major campaigns are. But this thing, I mean, we need all hands on deck. I mean, if we're frank about this, this is a big issue that needs to be that we need action on right away.
So for people listening, what would you say is the primary goal of POW? Like, if you had to say it in kind of a short little paragraph. Mission statement.
Our mission statement is to take outdoor enthusiasts and turn them into passionate climate advocates. Mm-hmm. So I mean, as outdoors people, and that's really where POW's focused. It started with snowboarders and skiers, but it's really now encompassing the whole outdoor sport community, who, in our opinion, should be the people most concerned with what's going on with the environment. I mean, we're the people that are out there in the field. We're in the forest. We're on the mountains and the glaciers, in the ocean, seeing what's going on, right? So if we can't get fired up and do something about this, then no one can. So our goal at POW is to give that community, that outdoor community, a place to come together, where their voice can be multiplied and amplified, and to try and make change to affect in our specific instance, policy in Canada, whether that's government policy, corporate policy, or just trends, like trying to push people, let's be more environmentally conscious.
So what would be like so say there's a bill coming, or there's let's just say, for just thinking about like Fairy Creek or something, or something. Let's just say there's a plot of land that they want to develop, and it's got some nice biodiversity, and it's something that needs to be protected. We'll just use that as the example, right? So what would be the steps from POW to say, hey, we need to protect this, or we need to make sure that this bill that can allow this to be mined or harvested or anything. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What are the steps you take in order to make this change? Because that's a lot of you're saying is we're getting all these people combined. We're increasing their awareness, and we want to be able to have these voices to create change. Well, how are you able to create that change? What's the steps?
Well, yeah, and that's a good question, because one of the cool things about the way we work with POW, especially here in Canada, is that we work with a lot of different environmental groups. So Eco-Justice, for example, is a group that we are in constant contact with. They are keeping their finger on the pulse of all the policy stuff that's going on.
Are they like a law firm, or?
They're a legal environmental group. So they're focused on policy level stuff and what's legal, like what can we do to stop that old growth clear cut that we're talking about, for example. We also work very closely with a lot of the other environmental organizations, be it David Suzuki Foundation or Stand Earth or you name it, across the board. And we're trying to coordinate so that we can use, our membership is very different than the membership of Greenpeace or the Sierra Club. And so we're all trying to sort of pool our groups and use our voice more collectively. Now, we rely a lot on people like Eco-Justice who understand, okay, well, you can go to Fairy Creek and protest, which is great. The Fairy Creek, the people that have spent their lives there for the last year or two really trying to fight what's going on there, it's wonderful. But ultimately, even if they're successful, the people on the ground, they may be able to stop Fairy Creek from getting logged. But we're kind of like on the back end with POW and with Eco-Justice, is we're trying to figure out how can we stop this from happening again. Mm-hmm. And so we're working at a bunch of different levels. And that's, when it comes to campaigns, that's where we're focused, is like, how can we actually affect change at the level where, new fossil fuel developments or drillings or whatever can't happen in the future, rather than just trying to stop each one single little thing.
And does it basically just boil down to power and numbers? Right? If we have enough people saying we don't want this, that's going to make the policy makers be like, oh, okay, well, there's a bunch of people that don't want this. Is this going to outweigh how much money we're going to make on this? Or do you know? Is that kind of to simplify it in a layman's terms?
Yeah, 100%. If you have 500,000 people coming out against something, the government's going to notice.
Right.
In POW Canada, I think we're at 23,000 members, which is significant and impressive in 4 years. But we need more voices. We need more. The more voices we can have speaking in unison, the more power we have. And the classic example is the NRA in the U.S. Right?
Yeah.
National Rifle Association. Look at the lock they have on politics in the U.S. and the gun lobby. It's not a positive example, but it's an example of what a big organization can do.
So basically, without using the word, because it's kind of, people see it as a dirty word, is you want to be the environmental lobby.
Yeah, for sure.
Basically.
For sure. Look what we're up against.
Right.
Fossil fuel industry makes billions and billions of dollars every year. Now, we rely on fossil fuels. It's the way our society is constructed. But the scientists have made it clear we cannot continue with business as usual with fossil fuels. But when an industry that has created a way of life, hydrocarbons, it's a very efficient way to get energy. When an industry makes billions of dollars by doing things a certain way, it's really hard to fight against them because they send the lobbyists to Ottawa. They do the PR campaigns. I mean, we've all seen it during the hockey games. It's like, oh, look at our new, we're greening the way we do things. I mean, there's so much BS involved, but that's what we're up against. And the only way we can do it is by beating them with numbers. We don't have the financial resources that they do, but you know what? We have a lot of passionate people that are like, you know what? We can't do this that way anymore.
Right.
So it's got to change.
Right. Because the outdoor industry is massive. It's absolutely massive.
Yeah. Collectively, it's bigger than fossil fuels. If you take the entire outdoor industry and pool it together, it's massive.
It's just not as organized for that one specific purpose as, say, the oil industry.
For sure. And it's spread out. It's not consolidated in the same way. But more and more people, be it RVers or canoeists or whatever that are out there seeing these changes in their environments are starting to go,
right. Just BC alone, and what's happened in the last year? We've got the heat dome. We'll start with the heat dome.
Highest temperatures ever set
3 days in a row, and then in the town, Lytton had the highest temperatures ever set. I think it's in the northern hemisphere, or is it just Canada?
In Canada.
And then on the fourth day, it burned to the ground.
It's completely gone.
We had unbelievable flooding and rains, like torrential, crazy rains and flooding in the fall. This is just in BC, like the southwest corner of BC. There was a tornado
in Vancouver, which is insane.
off of the airport. We had another crazy rain event here.
Two flooding events. We had the lowest pressure ever recorded in a storm that hit BC. We had the weather bomb. We had a heat dome. We had the atmospheric rivers. They're coming up with some really. The name game is pretty strong for these weathermen. Yeah, right. I actually learned that weather bomb isn't hyperbole from the media. It's actually a term. It's actually a scientific term, which is kind of cool. And it's actually not spelled B-O-M-B. It's got like a different kind of thing.
B-A-U-M-B?
I don't know what it is,
it's a Jewish
but
weather pattern.
I did learn that. We also set the highest ever recorded December day in history this year. Ugh. Yeah, early December, that rain event at BC, somewhere in BC, hit 22 degrees, I think, in December, which is just crazy. So it's getting weird out there, and the situation's urgent. I mean, you don't have to look too far to realize what we're up against, and that's why we need voices,
Right. Speaking of voices are, you can have a lot of positive voices that support you, but there's also a lot of voices that go the opposite way. And you, as being one of the faces of POW, have probably taken the most of those negative comments and those negative voices. I was talking to McIntosh when he was on the show for episode 200, and he's like, man, I got to give credit to Douglas because that guy gets a lot of shit. That guy takes a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Right? And that's kind of like your cross to bear on behalf of Dave and the crew behind the scenes, because like all the athletes are on the front lines, right? And I know in like the POW meetings, like the athletes meetings and whatnot, we've gone through specific training on how to deal with that. But no matter how well trained you are, it's got to wear you down a little bit.
For sure. But I also like to take a step back and realize where these people are coming from. They're scared. People are scared. There's most of the people that the real people. There's some bots and stuff like that, but whatever. But when I figure out it's a real person,
Russian shit tweet factories.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Most of the people work in fossil fuel industry. It's all they've known. For some people, it's multi-generational. It's all they've known their whole life, and they look at people like me and us as threatening their way of life. And it's tough, I think. To take that step back out of your own life and go, okay, whoa, wait a sec, there's a bigger picture here. And that's what we're trying to do. And we've got a bunch of policy steps at POW, and one of them is a just transition, is to make sure that those people are taken care of, and make sure that they're retrained to work in the renewable energy business. I mean, there's a lot of skill there in the oil patch, but and we're conscious of that, but I get it. People are scared. And I try to always keep that in mind, you know, when people send me some really
Does it really
nasty
get you?
stuff.
Does it ever get you though? Like one day, is there
Once
a day
in a
sometime where you're
while,
like,
you know, it's become so predictable, honestly, that you just expect it.
shut up and talk about skiing.
Oh, they call me a hypocrite. That's the number one. Oh, you. Oh, yeah. How was your, you know, flying to go ski somewhere or whatever? And the thing is, you know, I've made pretty big efforts to cut down on my personal carbon footprint, and that's been good. But you know, I think bringing it down to personal attacks is the wrong way to do it. We're not going to get anywhere. You know, and I heard a really good analogy somewhere just about a week ago. They said getting people to focus on their personal carbon footprints is the way we're going to solve climate change, is like having your town, your entire town covered in 10 feet of garbage and then asking people to clean up their yards. Like, you can clean up your yard. You can have a spotless yard, no garbage in your yard at all, but the rest of the town is still covered in 10 feet of garbage. I mean, we have to work together. We need higher level actions to do this. So whether I never fly again and I you know, do nothing that creates carbon of any sort, we're still not going to solve the problem. We have to work together. We have to think bigger. We have to get by the pettiness and the you know, the chance of hypocrisy. It's the first thing that everyone says to me. We've got to think bigger. We've got to think bigger.
It's progress, not perfection.
Yeah, and you know what? We can do more, but we need, the only way the government and the corporations are going to do more is by getting leaned on by a big group of people that has some buying power that affects, you know, their own futures. And it's what we got to do. I mean, for me, I look at I look at the future for my kids, you know, and I want them to have a future. I want them to be able to ski, but I also want them to be able to live, you know. It's just a lot at stake here.
Does that bother you? Does that keep you up at night, like little Sam?
It doesn't keep me up at night. I go through waves.
Yeah.
I go through waves.
Do you ever get to a point where you just get overwhelmed?
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes I just turn it off for like a week. I don't pay attention to any of the climate news. I you know, I follow that stuff pretty closely. Like I'm probably closer than I should, to be honest. I feel like I know too much sometimes. But every now and then I turn it off. And one of the things that I always say is, like, I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to use my skills to the best of my abilities to try and make the world a better place. But at the same time, look at this day we're having. There's snow in the mountains.
I've seen you skiing a lot more lately on the social media with your buddy Fogg.
Oh yeah.
Like,
we get out there.
You've been going just skiing.
Yeah.
Right?
And because, you know, you get to that point where it's like, wouldn't it be a shame, wouldn't it be a shame to worry so much about the future to not take advantage of what we have right now?
Right. Did you get away from it when all the you know, when your kids were growing up, and you're like, I need to make some money, I need to pay for my family, I need to do this work with Switchback, when you're full on into it? And now that COVID's been here and you had a little bit more time, have you just been skiing more for yourself? Like, so let's bring it back to skiing a little bit for your own, like, personal skiing pleasure. You're not filming too much anymore. Is it just more of a time where you can just, like, go out and shred? Is that what you're doing nowadays? Like,
yeah, I get out and shred a lot more than I used to. But part of the reason is actually this whole social media thing. You know, I don't have to be out filming a film part, for example, all winter long. All I got to do is, like, make sure that when it's powder, I'm out there and I get a good line and I can post it on the social feed. And, you know, I can do that just by skiing with my buddies. So I don't have to.
You're
be out
adapting.
there
you're adapting to the new generation.
Hey man, yeah.
yeah.
You can teach an old dog new tricks, apparently.
Right. I know that Solomon has. I've heard in the past that they do, like, in the team meetings, they'll put up the screen and they'll say this is how well you've been doing. They're gonna put up graphs and stats on your output.
Yeah, we used to get audited.
Yeah.
As to our social media. Used to. They don't do it in the same way, and they've changed. Instead of making people feel bad about maybe not totally nailing it, they do awards, and it's kind of a fun thing now where we get together and like the best post of the year, you know, you get a free bottle of some French liqueur or something like that. So it's become a little bit more of a positive experience where people are cheering each other on rather than looking at the screen in horror like, oh no.
That's what it was. It was like an anxiety inducing, like,
for
oh, no.
sure, for most people. Yeah. For most people it was.
Because not everybody is like, I can think of, I'm not going to mention his name, but I can think of a Solomon athlete like 5 or 6 years ago. It was just kind of an introvert. You know, he's an amazing skier, but he wasn't that guy.
Right.
He's not
right. And that's the thing. And I think as important as social media is, I think they've come to realize that there's a lot more going on. There's people that are in their communities are celebrated and have a lot of influence. You know, it doesn't have to be, you know, whose post gets the most likes or whatever. What does that even mean anymore?
Do you think was that like a focus? Maybe, I don't know if it's Solomon specific. Do you see that as a focus now? Is that maybe it's not necessarily we want someone that has this global mass appeal, but we're actually going to focus a little bit more on these people in their individual communities?
Yeah, I think so. There seems to be a little bit of a shift, and I was talking actually to some pro mountain bikers about this recently. And, you know, what does it mean to be a pro? What does it mean to be a pro skier, snowboarder, mountain biker, surfer, whatever? There's obviously people that are at the very highest level that are competing and gunning for world championships. But beyond that, there's a big spectrum of what it means to be a pro. And I had a talk with a young up and coming friend of mine who wants to be a pro mountain biker, and I said, who are you and what do you stand for? Because if I'm going to sponsor you, I don't just, you know, yeah, you can do this cool trick that like 50 other pro mountain bikers can do, but I want to know what I'm getting into. What do you stand for? Like, who are you? And look around at the pros that you know, and I bet you can answer that question with a lot of them.
You think that's kind of a prerequisite now?
Well, I think that's the way it's shifting is how do you differentiate yourself from the other 100 people that are just like you out there? And how can you add value to that company? How do your values align with their values? And, you know, for some companies, they want professional athletes that are environmentalists. For some companies, they want professional athletes that just show nothing but fun, or some that are hard workers or whatever, you know, like, but find your place. And that's the advice that I give to a lot of up and coming pro athletes of any sort these days. It's like, find your identity. I mean, it's cool to be a good skier, but you need to stand for something. You need to have values.
In those 25 years of skiing with Solomon or just being a pro skier, how many shifts do you figure there have been when it comes to, because you've seen them all, right? Like when I moved to Whistler in 99, when you guys were really just taking off, you know, movie 13 came out, and I was like, well, 13 and Heavy Hitting came out within like a year and a half of each other, and those two movies changed my life.
One for the better and maybe one for the worse.
I don't know. They're both pretty amazing. But there was you look at pro skiers then and then now, or how professionals have to act and how they create content, how they have to ski for their job, that sort of thing. You know, I remember talking to Tanner the first time I talked to Tanner, and he's like, there's no characters, there's no personality in this sport anymore. You're never gonna get someone like Tanner Hall again, or a Glenn Plake or something. Maybe if they do the Dennis Rodman route where they're all of a sudden they're in and established, and all of a sudden the switch flicks. You know what I mean? Because people don't allow that anymore. Yeah,
it's definitely homogenized a lot, and that's why I tell people, like, find your place, find a way to work into this box that we're all operating within, but find a way to make yourself just a little bit different.
Yeah.
And find, you know, something to stand for, something that makes you special in a way.
Have you had to adapt your style?
For sure, I've adapted my style constantly. I mean, I would say it's about every 5 years there's a shift. There's like a shift in the way the whole industry works and what the focus might be. You know, if I go back and try and chronicle through it, the first 5 years of me with Solomon was all the new school freestyle. So park pipe
Real
tricks.
Real Canadian
grabs.
Air Force. You guys are
New
the
Canadian
coolest.
Air
You guys
Force,
are the coolest
exactly.
ever.
Exactly. So that lasted for about 5 years. And then the next phase was taking it all to the backcountry. I'm taking my tricks to the backcountry. And then from there, I would say that tricks to the backcountry thing lasted maybe more than 5 years, but it was just evolving within itself. And then after 15 years, it started to be less about the highest level performance. You start to watch the X Games and people would, the X Games ratings were going down because people couldn't comprehend what they were watching anymore. All of a sudden, this idea of progression wasn't quite what it used to be, where everyone could relate to it. Tony Hawk did a 900. Shaun White just boosted 20 feet out of the pipe. When that stuff becomes super normal, then people, kind of get bored with it and go back to I want to watch a team sport where it's this team versus that team or whatever. Yeah. So things shift. And then at that point, skiing started going more, shifting toward the backcountry and adventure. And you saw that with, the athletes that kind of were coming to the forefront. And then
Solomon Guardian. And then the invention of all these new pieces of gear and stuff too.
Right. And then it became more about human power rather than just jumping in a helicopter and flying to the top. And all these products were developed so that you could walk up the mountains and then have a really good ski down. And so I've been so fortunate because I've kind of been able up till now to adapt to each of these new phases. Like if they happen in reverse, for example, at the start of my career, if it was all about the backcountry and then now it was all about tricks in the park, I would be well gone. So I've been very lucky to have sort of adapted with it.
When's the last time you threw a D-spin?
It would have been, I did one last season. Less than a year ago.
Are you still trying to do it every year?
Well,
you think you can get to 60 throwing a D-spin?
I don't know about 60, man. I don't even know if I want to try. But I might do one this year. I've been feeling pretty good on the skis lately.
Yeah.
So.
What's your you're getting a little older.
Yeah.
What's your workout? So I talked to Stan the other day, and he's like, "Man, if I'm going out for a day in the backcountry, I know I'm coming back sore." Mm-hmm. We're getting a little older, and you've got
But that's because Stan does not care about his body, and he sends it to flat off everything.
He's starting to, but just a little dig at you. You're much older than we are.
Yes,
I'm much older than Stan. You're a little bit older than me, but you're still a pro skier. How do you keep your body in shape? Are you a yoga guy? Are you a stretch guy? Or do you come home and you're like, oh my god, I can't move after your big POW day?
I should do yoga and I should stretch, but I hate them both, and I never do. I'm people aren't gonna want to hear this. I just go do my stuff. I had today, for example, I had a pretty big day. We ski toured. I don't know. We got over 2,000 vertical feet of ski touring today, just skiing up and down in crappy snow and whatever. And I feel great at the end of the day. And the worst thing for me is when I get stuck in the office and I'm stuck in a chair at a computer or looking at my phone or whatever. If I'm out in the mountains every day,
working, moving your body,
keeping
the joints lubed up.
I'm very fortunate because my body just loves skiing. It actually, it kind of, if I'm sore, I can come into ski season sore and I've got muscle tweaks and whatever. I go ski for 2 weeks. And I come out at the end and I'm usually feeling really good. So, I don't know. I'm just running with it. I don't know why that is, but I used to ski a lot of moguls. I still ski moguls. I still, it just keeps you moving, and it's in a symmetrical way. And I don't jump off everything anymore. I pick my days when I want to jump off something, make sure it's going to be a soft landing and there's some good snow, but
you've never really had any major injuries that I can think of either.
Well,
not too many.
I have, but they haven't been major. Maybe in the way that people think of. The most serious injury I had, which was something that people didn't even really know about, was a back. I had a bulge disc in my back pretty early in my with my time with Solomon, and JP O'Clair was kind of going through the same thing just ahead of me. So when I saw how serious it got for him, when it started happening to me too, I got some treatment, and I'm also married to a physiotherapist, so that helps.
Okay, so I was skiing with a buddy whose wife is a physiotherapist yesterday, and he's like, she doesn't help me out. She doesn't touch me.
No,
she's like, she's only unless she knows she's getting something back, so it's not even worth having a physiotherapist's wife.
No, which is true. But in the beginning of our relationship, yeah, that wasn't the case. Now that's the case. But she will still take a look at me if I'm in rough shape. Otherwise, she's like, make an appointment
with her to go to the.
Well, she doesn't work anymore, but so she'll send me. She's like, oh, you should go see so and so. They're really good.
I'd be like, what if I like make you dinner and
Yeah.
what do you think would be the fee?
Yeah, I think it's mostly to do with cleaning.
Vacuum the house, yeah.
Yeah, like I'll do the dishes. I'll make dinner tomorrow night. I'll clean the bathroom. You know, those are usually the fees involved. Yeah, so which is fair. No problem.
Have you got any? So COVID, whatever. We don't need to talk about that, and we're really unsure about where. I have some skiing plans this year. I had, for those of you wondering about the CMH heli trip I was talking about, I got COVID on that one. I got COVID canceled. But I've got some plans for Freeride World Tour. Hopefully going to Europe. Hopefully going to the Kicking Horse event. Cruise around BC. Fingers crossed. When we spoke about this at the beginning, but have you had any kind of tentative plans? You were talking on the phone the other day that said, hey, let's do this week because I'm going to be slammed for the rest of the winter.
Yeah, so what's happened to us, especially with our production work, is that with the COVID wave that swept through starting in December through January here, we had a lot of work that got either postponed or canceled or whatever. And so also looking forward, we were thinking to ourselves, well, let's, by mid to late February, things should start to turn. So let's start planning things for that. So all of our whole season of work is kind of getting thrown into the second half of the season. I'm optimistic. I think we've crested this. I've said this before, so maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. But the second half of the season is something that we're focused on. And first trip outside of Western Canada for me is scheduled for late February. I'm going to Quebec.
Chick Shacks?
Not the Chick Shack. I'm going to Tremblant actually, which is pretty cool for me because when I used to compete in moguls, we had a stop in Tremblant, and I've got good memories from that place. So it's and I haven't been back there for probably at least 20 years.
Oh,
so
wow.
I'm kind of fired up to go back there and see some friends. And
Excited for the Olympics?
yeah, I'm very curious about the Olympics. I think it's going to be a weird one.
I know a lot of the teams are. I know the skier cross team is in Calgary, just self-contained.
Yeah, it's really weird. I was just at Silver Star literally 2 days ago, and the Olympic cross-country skiing team was there, and we saw some of them out on the trails. I was actually doing a cross-country ski shoot, and they were, they stopped, but they were keeping their distance, man. Like you can tell they've been instructed. You do not go within 6 feet of any humans.
Can you imagine though, working your life to get to the Olympics to get screwed over by catching COVID?
Oh, you know what? I've been through an Olympic cycle where you focus for 4 years of your life on trying to get to the Olympics, and that is such a challenging thing for most people. And then to add this, I can't even imagine. I feel so bad for these people. Yay! I've qualified for the Olympics. I get to go finally, and then you're just so scared because it's just one positive test, and then your whole Olympic dream, the last 4 years of your life, is shattered. So I'm feeling for them. I really hope everyone gets through, but for sure there's going to be some people that don't get to do their thing, which is
I've heard of people
shame.
missing out on their final qualifying because of it too.
Yeah. I know a couple of people who actually didn't qualify because they missed their final qualifying stuff and now don't get to go.
Yeah.
And it's
heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I don't know. I'm going to watch, but as always, I love the Olympics. I love them.
Yeah, me too. That fire got stoked in me back in the 90s when I almost made it to Lillehammer. I didn't quite make it. I was first alternate.
That was 94?
Yeah, 94. But I've become a bit of a fan of the Olympics, and I've always paid attention since then. And then obviously Vancouver 2010 was probably the most fun I've ever had in this town for 2 straight weeks.
Right?
Like
it really was.
So good.
Every time I hear those, every couple of years you hear the rumors like, oh, maybe we'll bring the Olympics back to Vancouver. I'm like, do it. That was the most fun 2 weeks ever. It was amazing.
It was magic.
100%.
Yeah. It was just so cool to see. There was a lot of negativity going into it, but once it happened,
it was the best.
Oh, it was so much fun in town, and so much positive energy, and just you couldn't stop smiling. It was literally the best.
It was super cool. I saw a bunch of events. I was working at the Four Seasons then, and the Norwegian and the Norwegian cross country team, and all of their benefactors were staying at the hotel, and one of the American ski federations and all of their like money people and everything were at the hotel, and every time Norway would win a gold medal, we would get like 16 bottles of like Moe, and we'd line them up, and they'd come down and start popping in bottles and like passing them around, and it was like people were just having the best time.
Yeah,
it was. I 100% want them to come back here.
Yeah, and there's a pretty cool new bid. Have you seen the bid with
the Squamish Nation, right?
Yeah, with the First Nations and sort of the Bannock, the towns of Whistler and Vancouver with the First Nation lead on it is. I think that's a super cool take on it.
It's a neat step in the right direction, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Oh, we'll have to see. I'm behind it 100%. And you know what? Like although I've seen some crazy articles, where there's not going to be any viable cities left in the Northern Hemisphere.
Well, the POW just did that study. Actually.
Was it the POW study?
That was the POW
study.
Science Alliance that put that together. They did for the next 80 years, they did a study on where will the Winter Olympics still be able to take place.
Oslo and Stockholm. And
you know what? Well, we should say, but I was totally surprised by the city that will still be able to have. There's one city that could still host a Winter Olympics at 2100. It was not what I thought.
Which city is it?
Sapporo, Japan.
That makes sense because it snows.
Well, yeah, but it's not very far north. Like and it's not high. The mountains are low elevation, and it's not far north. But that Japan snow machine, the JPOW. Speaking of which, side note on JPOW, because nobody can go to Japan to ski this year. I have a friend that's working over there right now, and we keep in touch a little bit. They got 1,000 centimeters of snow in 5 weeks.
Did it snow in Japan? What is it? If it snows in Japan and no one was there to ski it, did it actually happen?
Well, he's been skiing it. He said he's been working there for 5 years, and he's like, this year is insane, and there's nobody there.
Nobody hyping. I was actually thinking about this earlier in the conversation. I was going to ask you, like, how many people are booking trips to Japan next year, and how many Japan edits are we seeing in the fall of 2023?
Yeah, that's all we're going to see next year for sure. Everybody will be going, and it'll be a dud year. You know that.
I know. I always feel bad. I've probably spoken to maybe 2 or 3 people in my life that have been like, I went to Japan for a month and it didn't snow. I'm like, oh, the
most unlucky person
ever. Exactly. Yeah. There's like 3 people in the world that's happened to, kind of thing. I'm craving. I've been twice. You used to go every year.
A lot of my pro ski career really kicked off in Japan. Mm-hmm. I've been going there since my first trip was 91, and I've been back a lot. I've got a lot of friends in Japan, a lot of business partners and people that I've worked with over the years, and I love it over there. It's a special place for me.
I skied with you in Japan.
Probably.
I ran into you. That's right. I ran into you in Japan. It was my second time I went. It was in like 2015.
We met at the fire festival in Nozawa Onsen, didn't we?
I don't know if we saw it at the fire festival. I've been a couple times. It was one of the craziest nights of my life. Was the first time I went to the fire festival. But I saw you in Niseko. You were doing, I think with Kai, and you might have been with...
Oh, we were doing a Solomon...
you were doing a Solomon thing. And I think that was the first time I actually had a proper conversation with you. We had met briefly, I think, in the past. Or maybe... I think you'd done the podcast the first time, but you just were nice and came to do it as like a media thing. You didn't really know each other. And then I ended up riding the chairlift with you, went night skiing, and riding the chairlift with you. I'm like, I'm talking to Mike Douglas. I'm like, right on. I'm like, this is cool. I'm like, he's a really nice human being. Right. That was like part of the transition for me from you as like Mike Douglas, the guy that was like on the wall. And I was like, that's Mike Douglas. It's one of the reasons I started doing podcasts sort of thing, to a point where I'm like, oh, he's just a guy.
Just a guy, man. Ask my wife; she'll tell you I'm a guy at not necessarily always in the best ways. So.
I think I told this the first time we had this conversation, but like back in the day when we did that Solomon community nights, and Solomon was having its really big spike in popularity, and back in like, I don't know, early 2010-ish, 11. There was a big event at a Solomon party at the Weston Solomon store. Mm-hmm. And we were kind of helping out with it, and I was standing at the front just waiting to get in line. They hired like big bouncer dudes, and you rolled up with somebody, a couple people, and the guy wouldn't let you in, and you didn't have any ID.
I think I remember
and
that.
And he wouldn't let you in, and and you're standing underneath a massive photo of you in the window.
Yeah.
And I was looking at this being like, oh my God, they're not I didn't want to say anything, because I'm like, who the hell am I? Nobody at this point. I'm just like, oh my God, they're not like Mike Douglas in. I was looking at this photo, and people were like, dude, this is his party. Blah. He's like, no, I can't do it, man. He was just being this. He's doing his job. He's being kind of a dick about it. And some guy went and like smacked his arm, and he went, hey. And he grabbed him, and he going, look. And he turned around. There's like this 10-foot photo of you. And I think he finally was like, all right, go in. I always thought that was fun. That was one of my funniest memories.
Yeah, it's I've learned to be chill in those situations, because chances are the bouncer has no idea who you are.
Exactly.
He's not a skier. He doesn't know what's going on. He's just doing his job.
You handled it cool and humble. You're like, that's fine. I'll just wait. Yeah. You're like, you didn't even point. Everybody else was like, you just kind of stood there and let the entourage be like, ah. But you've always been that kind of humble guy. You never really, like you said, you weren't really the rock star type. Like you mentioned Brad, and you mentioned that crew from back in the day. You're just Mike Douglas.
Yeah. I've got pretty humble roots.
That's probably where the Godfather nickname came from, because you're just like sitting in the corner telling people to go do your
that actually came from a guy that used to work at Solomon, Ted Wardlaw. He was the head of marketing for the US, and he coined that. I'd never seen it before until it popped up in a Solomon ad for the Pocket Rocket, the first ad for the Pocket Rocket. It said the Godfather of New School or something, and I was like, people are like, oh, that's cool. I was like, oh yeah, okay. Ted's like, yeah, I just thought of it and threw it on there, and it's kind of stuck ever since then. So
that's where it came from.
That's where it came from, Ted Wardlaw. Yeah.
And you're just like, I'm down with this. This is a good one.
Yeah, I'm like, I can go with that. Godfather. Of course, now all my friends joke around and call me the
grandfather.
Yeah. So
whatever.
But whatever. I'm still there.
I dig it,
having
man.
a good time.
Well, thank you for coming by. Where can people, specifically Canadians, where can they go and find some information on POW Canada?
So protectourwinters.ca. You can sign up right up there on the homepage, and it's free. And get involved.
What's the requirement?
I think the requirement's just to be concerned citizen, concerned about the environment, concerned about our future, and wanting to throw your voice into the mix. And you can be as involved or as hands off as you want. I encourage everyone to get involved, because I think if you have concerns about the environment, concerns about our future, then getting involved is a good way to help alleviate some of the stress around that, and at least feel like you're pushing things in the right direction. Right.
Now, one last thing that I didn't touch on before is when it comes to like financing an organization like that. It's a non-for-profit, right? But you said they do have a bunch of staff members and board members. It's important to know that I know the staff members, it's the job, they do work, and they do get paid. Board members do not.
Board members do not get paid. I've never gotten paid from POW.
No.
Which when I put my hours in that I do on an annual basis, it's pretty significant.
Are you like to write those hours off as like a charitable donation?
I can't, no, but I wish I could, man. I wouldn't even have to pay tax on it.
You'd get a return. You'd end up getting paid in a tax refund.
Yeah, exactly.
And then most of the funding for POW Canada comes from corporate donorship, correct?
Yeah, so we have a bunch of brand partners. So we're looking for brands that align with our vision, that want to start putting their money and their marketing efforts behind making the world a better place. And then we're getting an increasing number of income from donors, from people that are just saying, I've got enough income in my life, and I want to throw $20 a month toward POW because I believe in what they're doing. I believe they're doing a good job. So we're getting more of those. So,
and I think it's important to notice too that I've never ever seen POW Canada ask for money from members.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we get that people, some people are strapped and they can't afford things, and that's not a reason to not get involved.
Right.
Money shouldn't be a barrier.
Yeah. And that's what I was trying to get to is like, you never say, hey, sign up for POW. I've never once received a hey, give us a donation. They've never had them ask for money. So that's important to know, because I know a lot of, go to like UNICEF or some of these big fund, like these massive global charities, when you look at how much some of the executives are making, you're like, well, where's all this money actually going? Do you know what I mean? So that's one thing that I have noticed, is that you don't ask for you don't try and do a membership drive so you can take their money. You just want to get them involved.
Yeah. No, I'm not gonna lie. Like, we can use your money.
Yeah.
The more money we have, the more power we have. The more.
I'm just saying,
we
you're
can
not
get
going
done.
out of your way to ask, but you're more than welcome.
We don't want that to be a barrier,
right,
to people getting involved, because I think it's critical that we all get involved, that we all use our voices, we throw our weight behind this movement and try to make a better future.
There you go. So we can all go skiing.
And live.
Right. Well, thanks, man. It was awesome to have you back here all these years later in the house.
Yeah, pleasure.
And I've really appreciated getting to know you more over the years, a lot through POW as well, and being able to call you a friend, man. It's my pleasure having you.
Thanks, buddy.
Cheers, man.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Low Pressure Podcast, the podcast for skiers. This has been a Redmark Media production.